Hi and welcome. I'm Steve Martirano, and this is the Behavioral Corner. You're invited to hang with us as we discuss the ways we live today, the choices we make, the things we do, and how they affect our health and well-being. So you're on the corner, the Behavioral Corner. Please hang around a while. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Behavioral Corner. It's me again, Steve Martirano, your host and guide. I hope you know what we're doing here. We hang on the corner and run into very interesting people and talk about stuff that affects our behavioral health. So the Behavioral Corner is really a podcast about everything. Sit back. We got the second in what I hope will be one of your favorite episodes on the program. Our underwriting partners are a great resource, not only financially, but because of the people that work for them. And we call upon them very often. In this case, two of my favorite folks from Retreat Behavioral Health, Grace Shober and Magie Hunt. Both have been very successful and key players with Retreat. And they're with us in their role now, their new role. I crown them the Movie Mavens. They join us to talk about the job Hollywood does in general in depicting the very serious issues associated with substance abuse disorder. It's nothing new for Hollywood. They've been doing it for a long time, more so now than ever, because the problem is so much larger. Just the other evening, I stumbled upon a great movie from the 40s called Lost Weekend, which is a harrowing description of alcoholism. If you have not seen it, by the way, I know it's 1940 something, but it is an unbelievable portrayal of a man sliding down into a real abyss. So they've been doing it for a while. They're doing it a lot now. We decided we'd bring the ladies in here and be the Siskel and Ebert of reviewers and take a look at some of the popular stuff that deals with the issues of substance abuse disorder in general and some more specifically. And we decided to begin this by talking about the sensation of cable television, HBO's Euphoria, which just this past week or so concluded episode or season 2. It's a depiction of life in a high school in some unnamed Southern California community. And in general, it's about their lives as individuals and as a group, but specifically the issue of substance abuse through the character of Ruby or Rue. So I think you're going to get a review unlike any you've ever heard, because Maggie and Grace have been there and done that and come out the other side wonderful, successful women. So they know what they're talking about when they look at a movie and say, that's nonsense or that's great. So, okay, I got it. Oh, incidentally, in this, fair warning, okay, spoiler alert. I don't think we're going to give away specific plot points that'll spoil this for you if you've not yet seen it. But we're going to talk about events that occur in this thing. So if you haven't seen it and you want to just come back later and look at this, then you're fair warned. But we're going to talk about Euphoria, which I personally am having a great time watching. Okay, let's get right to it. General impressions, one at a time. Do you love Euphoria? Do you like Euphoria? Or do you hate Euphoria? Mag, go ahead.
Yeah, I did really enjoy the show. I enjoyed the show for other reasons, the drama of it all. I was also in need of a good show. I saw it as a typical HBO show. I like HBO, but they always are pretty raunchy in what they add to television. But I liked it. I'm sad that season 2 is over, although I did like season 1 significantly better. I definitely liked the show and I recommended it actually to a staff member on our executive team, Christy Gariano, and she is loving the show right now currently. But I have definitely my critiques, and the reason for I love it is not necessarily for what it was portrayed for, but just really like the drama and the shockingness of it all, really.
Yeah, we're going to get to the soap opera nature of it because it really is one of the grand soap operas I've ever seen. Grace, how do you judge it in general?
Here's the best part about this podcast is we can there's different views, on each show. I don't like to use the word hate. I would say that it was super painful for me to finish that entire thing. I watched it because we were reviewing it and things like that. So I did get through it. I thought it was terrible. I would never ever recommend that to anybody. And that's my personal opinion.
Right.
I think like the whole time I was like watching it, I was thinking to myself, if you like this, love this show, is there something wrong with you? That's like how I felt, because for me, it was just like, I put my headphones in to listen to it. I didn't want anybody else to hear it like around me. And I just thought it was unbelievably terrible.
Well, you know what? I have had that feeling. I remember vividly leaving the theater after seeing Pulp Fiction, which everybody generally, praises, and it's a great movie. But I remember looking at the suburban crowd that I was a member of pouring out of the theater, oh, how about this and how about that? And I was overwhelmed by, this is not a good thing that all these people thought that was entertaining, even though it was. So I get what you're saying. I'm interested, and we can get into this at some other point, but there's a sharp divide between you. Maggie thinks it's helpful for people in the field to take a look at this. Grace said you wouldn't recommend this to anyone. It's certainly both, incredibly valid positions. So, again, it is not entirely about substance abuse, but the central character, the hub around the wheel, is the character of Rue, and we're going to get into her story, which is why we're here, in more specifics in a bit. But let's take some time and talk about the kind of soap opera stuff. Grace, I know how you feel. You feel very strongly about this. Is there anyone in that cast, any character that you can root for, or that you feel sympathetic towards, or is there who are your favorite characters, if you have any?
I don't have like really I would say like favorite characters, although Maggie and I did talk about this. The drug dealer they have, Fez or whatever, I think he's a funny character. I kind of like him. But the one that I like really I think that I was like rooting for the most is Gia, because she is struggling with Rue, her sister, being such a mess, and for Rue's mom and for Gia, those are like the two people throughout the show that I thought were like portrayed something that was like relevant, to the substance abuse community and like all that kind of stuff. And anybody else, I could take or leave. I just didn't, I didn't like any of them. Even Rue, to be honest. I mean, she was okay. She's a great actress. It doesn't take away from the fact that she's a great actress. But I could kind of take or leave her too. The mom and Gia were the two that I really connected with the most.
Yeah, the Gia character is heartbreaking. And that actress is probably not going to be noticed. It's a shame. The way she suffers silently.
Suffers in silence. Yep.
Had the ring of truth, I'm guessing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Siblings just sit back and go, I hate you. I love you. What are you doing?
That's what I felt like. I felt like I was thinking about like my brother and sister during the whole thing. And I was like, everything else, like you said, seemed like so glorified and like all that. And then you have Gia, who I like kind of like was thinking about my brother and sister. And I'm like, they are falling to the wayside totally, because of everything that I was going through and everything that Rue was going through, she was falling to the wayside. So yeah. I
mean, it's one of the great depictions of collateral damage from this disease that I've ever seen. I mean, it's just a wonderful character. Maggie, who do you like?
Love Fez, and I love Lexi.
Wait, I got to jump in here now. What am I to conclude from two folks who had serious substance abuse problems in their youth when they come on and say, "Oh, I really like the drug dealer"?
Because I do feel like he was also, so like, I think back to like, the kids who I grew up with and like the kids that I bought drugs from, and like, they definitely thought they were so, bad. And like they, the tone of voice that they would use and the language that they would use. And like, yeah, homie, I feel you, like, so all of that that brought me back. So he was like one of, the best characters. And then in the second season, he starts to change and you see this change in him. Not that he wants to like stop selling drugs, but Grace and I also had talked about like his response, I would have loved to go to a little convenience store and bought some drugs at a carnival, right from the place, or go to a little convenience store. But
how realistic is that?
I did like him, the tone of voice that he was, the attitude that he had.
He's in a movie called North Hollywood, which is about skaters. And the actor, whom I wasn't familiar with, and he's the same guy in the he's not a drug dealer, but he's the same guy. So he has a limited range, but he's got that Fezco guy down pat.
Mm-hmm. Well, think about the fact that he, there were so many times that he refused to sell things to Rue because he knew that she was different than other people who were just doing it to have a party or to have a fun time. And I've never come across a drug dealer that was not selling to you,
Okay. That was my next question. Does Hollywood often go down, the prostitute with the heart of gold is another phony Hollywood construction. I think, not that there aren't, but that, go-to thing. And I'm watching this and I'm going, he's got a relationship with her and we're supposed to sit here and believe he has our best interest at heart. This is nuts. Right. You agree. That's crazy, right?
Yeah.
So when we focus in on for folks that are watching this and don't have this disease in their lives and are wildly entertained by this stuff, here's what we're trying to tell you. Yeah, it's fun, but be careful. That guys like him don't exist.
Nope.
They do not exist in the real world. If a guy sells you drugs, he doesn't give a damn about you. Okay. Yep. It's an absolute great point. Well, I think he's great too, but you got Mag.
Oh, I was just going to say so one of the things that really is annoying about the show overall is that they're all beautiful actors and actresses. We want to watch beautiful actresses and actresses do anything, do yoga, have heart attacks, all of these things. So when it comes to addiction and substance use disorder and mental health, of course we want to watch that. Of course we're drawn into that as a topic and idea. And they're all beautiful. So, you fall in love with.
Give us a little grunge, Yeah.
It's the irony of getting our information from theatrical sources. People think that the history that they see in movies is completely accurate. And they think, as you guys just said, that these depictions must be close to the truth. Look how good these people are. So it's an irony you can't get around unless you have, you understand that you're watching a movie. It's called the willing suspension of disbelief. You can't enjoy a Superman movie unless you believe a man can fly. Well, you can't watch a story about substance abuse unless the actors are pretty good at trying to depict it, but they get it wrong sometimes. Listen, with one more thing about the drug source guys, they did a clever thing though. They took the archetype, a drug pusher, and split him in half. Fezco is the guy who cares about Rue, and his protege, the maniacal ashtray, is the utter. In fact, he's completely over. I mean, I'm sure there are maniacs running around that are 12 and 13 years old, but that's what they did. They wanted to have the character who sells the drugs be somewhat more human, so they split them. They made two characters: a crazy guy who's a maniac, and Fezco, who's just, after all, providing a service. Great, just great stuff. So you guys are out of high school a few years for sure. I am out of high school, my high school had dirt floors. Okay. So that's how long ago it's been since I've been in a high school setting. And I look at this as a, depiction of high school. High school is a fertile ground for Hollywood. They've made some wonderful movies about high school, and they've made this movie about high school. How does this stack up to your way of thinking with regard to those kids and what they're doing in high school? Does it bear any resemblance to truth? Grace, what do you think?
Well, I'll be honest with you. There's a lot of high school I don't remember. But the stuff that I do, absolutely not. Because none of my friends, first of all, we didn't look like that, everybody's so hot and all that kind of stuff in the show. But we never threw parties like that. Those parties were over the top ridiculous. If we did throw a big party, the cops would come almost immediately, the whole thing. I don't remember at all. And I have to say for sure that this is not how it was. The whole thing was like unbelievably sexualized. So like, I do not in any way, shape, or form remember being like, my friends being like, oh, you didn't do that yet? So, and then being so excited when that happened and like this whole thing, I couldn't relate with any of that high school stuff at all.
Yeah, I agree with you about the hypersexualization. Maggie, does it have any ring of truth to anything you can imagine that's even going on?
No, and I also think it was a little bit scary. It did make me also a little scared too, because I think about like, let's say this is what high school is currently like. Mm-hmm. I have kids in those coming grades that I'm like, how am I going to protect them from
homeschool? Mags, we got to homeschool.
I know. No, but for my high school, like there was definitely beautiful people, but not, I mean, like the body shapes and they, and I don't know, like the first season when it kind of took each character, I always like a backstory, like about somebody. But I think about the cat, the one who was like doing those sexual things, like on the internet, which they paid a heavy attention to in the first season and not at all in the second season. I think that is especially that I never experienced in high school. I do remember feeling like kind of like what Grace said, like at a certain age, like, oh, you didn't do this yet, or you did do this, and then we're going to judge you that you did do this. So I do remember feeling some of the pressures that they're talking about. In a sense, I can remember some of those.
Well, this is a great point because we'll get into the controversy. It's a very controversial television program. It has aroused a lot of feelings about, what they're doing here. And we'll get into that a little bit later. But the charge has been that they glorify drug use and the drug life. We'll discuss that in a minute. But it's interesting that they have missed the point you just raised. If they're glorifying anything, it's sexual promiscuity. In fact, dangerous sex. Sex that no 16, 15-year-old person should ever even be engaged in. Just very, very sexualized, aggressive sex. And they don't get any, isn't it interesting? You don't get any criticism for that. Nobody's saying they shouldn't be doing that. Great point, though. It is an absolute point. And incidentally, with regard to high school life, just this one thing, and it's not giving too much away. Season two's finale is basically a two-parter wherein one of the characters writes a play for the high school who wants to do Oklahoma. Makes sense. Do Oklahoma. But not that crowd. So she writes this play, and I'm telling you, it's worth the price of admission to watch this play. It's the most outrageous high school play you've ever seen. It probably would have cost $2 million to stage it alone. But it was fun. I thought that was fun. What did you think of it, Grace, the play?
I just felt like what Maggie was saying earlier was season two. Like if I absolutely was forced to watch a season again, it would be season one. So like season two, I felt like kind of bored, and I felt like that show, like you just said, is like so outlandish. Like it would have been shut down immediately. But you know what I mean? Like some of the stuff that was going on, like we were doing, it would be Young Again and Into the Woods and, high school and stuff like that. So it was like, all of that was like crazy. I felt like I also agree with Maggie, and I didn't think about her at the moment. I did kind of like Lexi too, because she was also kind of like this, like, more realistic character, I felt like. But here's what I didn't like. In that show, she got all offended when her sister came up and was pissed off. And it's like, and her sister said, Cassie said, she was like, you can do all this, and then it's bad that I'm upset. It was like she absolutely put all her stuff out there and humiliated everybody, and then was shocked that people were upset, So like at that moment is when I was like, I don't like her. You know what I mean? Like that's how I felt. I just felt like it was so unrealistic for high school. No way would any teacher sit back and allow. I mean, where was every teacher?
Well, let's get your views on that, because that's the other thing that strikes me about this. Is the almost total absence of any authority figures at all. For kids involved in their behavior, the cops should be more involved in their lives. We rarely see cops, and we sure don't see adults.
Mm-hmm. No.
We do not see adults anywhere. You're right. Somebody had to read the script, didn't they? I mean,
Yeah,
some adult.
If anything, it does show the danger of trying to be your kid's best friend, because that's what all these parents were doing. They were letting them get away with everything. There was like no parental supervision. Oh yeah, come drink at our house. Yeah, you can have a party here. And then this is like the crap storm, if you will, that like came of all these kids' lives. So like you kind of like blame the kids like during the show, but then you think about it and you're like, this is really a lot of the parents' fault, you know? Nobody was involved. Like,
well, the great moment that makes that point clear is, I guess it's Cassie who's involved with her best friend's boyfriend, and it's a whole train wreck, and she's an emotional basket case to begin with.
mm-hmm.
And her mother's reaction during that one meltdown, the mom who's, always drinking and just thinks it's, it's fun. When she says, "Oh my God, you need an exorcism." When you're having an emotional crisis as a young woman and that's your mom's advice, you're in deep trouble.
Yeah.
But Mag, there are no adults in this. They've wiped them out. And clearly that's something people have to be careful of, watching.
Well, and I was just going to say, Grace and I talked about this too. Even Rue's mom, the first time I went to treatment, I was 18 years old. I just had graduated from high school like 3 months before then. And so when I got out of treatment, I was still like a child, and my mom was still taking me places and, not allow, like, if I was like, oh, I'm going to go, I wasn't allowed to sleep over anybody's house. I had to be home, like, and now, sometimes I obeyed the rules and sometimes I didn't, but like, the precedent that she set and the boundaries that she set were not any like, oh, go ahead. You know what I mean? And she would drug test me. So I feel like they were starting to like kind of go on the lines a little bit, but they still just like let her do pretty much whatever she wanted. You know what I mean? Yeah. And they tried to kind of show how the mom was, you shut your phone off. Where are you? That kind of stuff. But,
Yeah. Well, you know what? Again, they consolidate a lot into one or two people. And that leads us to Rue, who is the central character, this young girl ravaged by drugs. She when we this second season, and the first, to a certain extent, she is going down that dark road that you guys know very, very well. Although they even hedge a little bit of that. But give me your impressions of Rue, Grace. Is there anything you see in that characterization that strikes you as true or false?
Yeah, I mean, again, we were talking about this earlier. And I had seen it, but she's like, wait until you see this part. Like when she has that unbelievable meltdown, about her mom taking those pills, which like, by the way, whatever happened with that? You know what I mean? Like you owe her $10,000. And so I was just like curious about what happened there. But yeah, like that one scene in particular, I thought was like the only scene throughout the entire show that showed actually what it's like, like the other stuff is like, you can act that and you can this and that. But she like, when she used her whole body to like slam through that door, I was like, oh my God, and Mags and I were talking about how like, we were both like that, we were both like nasty and then we were nice. And then we were like the Sour Patch Kids, like we were sweet and then sour, sweet and then sour. And so that whole scene was really, it was realistic for me.
Yeah. Yeah. She, again, the actress is amazing. She does more with her face and her mouth. In particular, the way she can express, I can't explain it very well. You have to look at it. She just has a great sense of how to use her they call it their instrument, their body. Her face says so much. Tell about Maggie. Discuss what was it? The Jolly Rancher when she's trying to open up the can't look. Grace is already upset. You hated that scene, didn't you, Grace? You both did, right?
Yeah. I mean, we talk, I was sitting on my couch, I'm watching on my TV, like, what is happening? Like what, she's trying to, I guess what they're trying to say is she was shaking from her withdrawal and that she couldn't open the wrapper of a Jolly Rancher. And I'm like sitting there, I just flabbergasted. Like, this is what, you know what I mean? Like show something else, show Restless Legs, you know what I mean? Shows like, so, there was some things that they talked about that were good, like what Grace said, but the wrapper part, I was like, open the wrapper. Like sugar goes to the same place where, opiates go to. Open the wrapper.
Yeah. If I understand what you guys are saying about, she's trying to open up this candy and she's having a hell of a time and she's shaking and snot is all over the place. And when you said, please wait a minute, when you are really stressed out and borderline dope sick, you're looking for sugar, and you would have no trouble opening that wrapper. You'd put the thing in your mouth without even opening it if you had to. You hated it too, right, Grace? You thought it was just like,
oh, it was unbelievably frustrating. I was just like, what are they doing? Like the amount of time and energy they spent on that Jolly Rancher, if they like put that into something else, because like, I'll tell you right now, like I've walked miles when I'm dope sick, Maggie's probably walked miles when she's dope sick so like, you can still like, if you're like on a mission to do something, you're not going to sit there and you're not going to waste 10 minutes of your life trying to open up a Jolly Rancher. It's just not going to happen. And I was just like, Maggie like warned me about that scene. I'm like, oh, and I saw it and I was just like, I was so angry during the whole thing.
Oh, you know what?
Oh, yeah, go ahead. I was just
go ahead.
There was a couple of things though about Rue's recovery that I thought Grace would like a lot more. One of the things is that when she was going to meetings, that she didn't tell them that she relapsed, and that she was like being secretive about it, but then outed herself. Like, I can't tell you how many people come to meetings, but like don't want to let like the group of people down. So they like don't tell them that they've relapsed, but then like a couple months later, so in that sense, it shows that like not everybody gets it the first time, in a 12-step program. I also felt like it showed like similarities for people. And I thought Grace, I thought you would have liked that part. But
well, no, it's not. They're like that. When we're talking about like Rue more specifically, like there are like a couple scenes. Like I didn't like the sponsor, to be honest with you. I didn't like Love. I think like every time they showed at a meeting, it was just tough because she was like standing up there and they pretty much tell the same story over and over and over. She's standing up there and they'll just like, it's almost like a flashback, like every time. But I thought there were definitely parts. There was one part in particular where she was at Fez's house and had to like hide in his grandma's room. And that bottle of pills like started talking to her. Like she could almost see that it was talking to her. And that I thought was interesting because unless you actually like, they had to do that for a show. Like you have to show the bottles like moving, like they're talking, because otherwise you don't understand. So like that theatrical part is fine. And I relate it with that because I'm like, there are so many times it's like, there are things that are just going to tempt you no matter what, you know what I mean? And so like, there were some good spots, but nothing that hit me quite like the interaction, that big blow up she had with her mom and her sister.
Yeah. Well, again, we're back to that scene with the candy wrapper is, I believe, a function of her ability to do that. And if you're the director and writer I'm going to knock people's socks off with her trying to open a candy wrapper. Look how good she is at it. I love it when Grace rolls her eyes. You know what it's like? I've always said this, when you see a courtroom drama or a medical show and you're loving it, you should stop and go, I wonder what a nurse or a doctor thinks of this, or a lawyer. They must be rolling on the floor, just thinking, how silly is this? Okay, this is great. Just a couple more things about Ruth's story. I know there's the special, which is her and her sponsor in a diner on Christmas Eve, and she is at the brink, or at least one brink. She's threatened suicide. She expresses worthlessness, and her sponsor comes to try to bring her around. Maggie, what's your experience? With your experience, how did they play that scene? He's much older. He's a male. She's young and a woman. Does that dynamic work in a sponsor context?
So more recently, I would say that, especially with different sexualities and different genders and things like that, it is becoming a little bit more common in some areas, especially, California or wherever it was, located, where I thought it was located, but they didn't necessarily say where.
No, they don't say.
But, like a little bit more aggressive nature of like somebody who has, an understanding of the 12 steps, and if the situation is right. I mean, I would never recommend that for anybody. I would always say to keep the same sex sponsor, but it's hard to say that now because with gender transitions and gender identities and sexuality and all that kind of stuff, you can't really close that in now. There was a time that I have sponsored a male person who was gay, and it worked because he wouldn't want to have talked about this same stuff with somebody who was heterosexual because he felt like that they would have judged him, and I didn't judge, you know what I mean? And I didn't judge him. So in that sense, the way that was set up, it made a little bit of sense.
Grace, have you had the experience of being a sponsor for someone or had a sponsor at some point?
Oh yeah. I mean, Mag's been my sponsor for, the past like 7 years or whatever. But yeah, I've sponsored a bunch of people. I've had one of the same sponsees for the past almost 7 years too. And I wouldn't recommend that. You know what I mean? I think that again, I wouldn't have recommended that for Rue because I think it was like kind of unclear. Like, she was bisexual. So it was like, it could have gone kind of either way. I think what I would have suggested more so would be like, if she felt more comfortable with a man, maybe a younger man, if that's really what she felt. But I think it is best if you can unless you're, gay or bisexual, maybe more so gay, I think that you can then go to another gender to sponsor you. But otherwise, I think it's safer to stay with the gender that you are.
Yeah, that's a great point. It is a fraught relationship, a sponsor and someone in active use. And, I don't know whether people think it's just something anybody can do, or you pick a number and that's your sponsor. But I think it's something that you guys have said has to be carefully approached under the right circumstances so you don't do more harm than good.
Look, there's things that I could tell Maggie that I would never feel comfortable telling a guy. You know what I mean? So it's just, I guess it depends on comfortability, but also a time in maybe super early recovery and one of my stints of recovery that I would have gone for a male because my mind wasn't on being sponsored, so it's just, you got to be careful there.
I think maybe, and just this one point about Ali, who's his name, the older sponsor, Rue has apparently been shattered by the death of her father when she was 14. It is characterized, I think, I can say this, as the central issue in her life that's caused her to spiral out of control. So maybe he's supposed to represent the father figure that she lost. Mm-hmm. On this final note about Rue's story, again, they make a very big point that the death of her father at 14 is the trauma that set her down this path. Is that too simple a depiction of how somebody becomes a substance abuser, Grace?
Definitely. I think it's something you can put your finger on and be like, this makes sense why they're an addict or an alcoholic. So it's it's definitely part of the puzzle. I think it's part of the puzzle, but it's not the whole puzzle. There's so many different things, that lead to somebody being an addict or an alcoholic that sometimes the thing that's just the most shining bright in your face is what you want to blame all of it on. So I think that it's definitely part of the puzzle, but it's not the entire reason why. Yeah.
Maggie, you agree with that?
Yeah, I was going to say, I think it's a huge stereotype though, too, of course, there are some people who don't necessarily have any significant trauma before their use. You know what I mean? Maybe they're feeling so much physical, pain, but they don't know how to, quiet that. So they take substances and then they become addicted. You know what I'm saying? By taking it every day and building the tolerance. So it's not always just this one specific situation is what set me off into the addiction of this. But of course, it has to leave Rue as her mom is a single mother and, this traumatic experience, but it doesn't always have to be that way.
It's kind of a typical Hollywood stunt. Let's make the mystery. Let's reveal what the cause is, what the mystery is. Oh, her father died. It's too easy. Yep. Maggie Hunt, Grace Shober from Retreat Behavioral Health. They are our movie mavens. They've joined us to sum up season 2 of Euphoria. We're not going to do season 3. You feel good about it? Maybe we will, maybe we won't. But there's so many other things we're going to be taking a look at down the road. But I do want to end with this. With regard to what you've seen now of this series, which, as I said at the beginning, is a big, big phenomenon. It's 3 million people. I think it's probably the most watched show certainly on HBO. Having seen it now, do you think we've talked about what it gets wrong in terms of accuracy, but do you think it in any way glorifies drug use, Maggie?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
You do think it does?
Oh yeah. I mean, I think it makes it absolutely look cool. It's these cool, pretty girls and boys in high school that are having these drinking and drug parties.
Wow.
Yeah, for sure.
Grace?
I think so too. Yeah. I mean, again, we talked about it glorifies the sexualization more of everybody in the show, but definitely, yeah. I mean, Rue is the only one that really paid a whole lot of consequences. Everybody else is having a great time,
Yeah, she's sort of like the straw man here. We don't want to.
Yeah.
Let's make sure somebody gets screwed up.
Yep.
Let's make it her. Well, then I know the answer to my final question. Your children are not high school age yet.
Almost.
If they were, you wouldn't let them watch the show, would you? Or you advise against it because you couldn't stop.
I wouldn't even tell my kids when they were like, "Oh, what are you watching recently?" I wouldn't even tell them the name of it because I don't want them looking it up. And my son will be in high school next year, and there's no way.
Yeah, I have to turn it off.
Yeah, I've mentioned to a few of my younger friends who are starting out that don't have children. I said, well, don't watch this program because you won't have kids if you watch this program.
Well, and the funniest thing is too, I said to Mags, look, I'm not a prude. She's not a prude. We've lived a life. And there's like hectic things that went on in it, but still I was like, ugh, like the whole time. So like, no, absolutely not.
All right. So there you go, friends. You can see why I picked these two women, because they just kick dirt on the most popular show in America, because they know what's real and what ain't real, because they're the movie mavens. Guys, thanks so much. We're going to do this every month, right?
Yep.
So you just, in between then and the next time, just throw some ideas on a movie you want to do, and we'll all watch it together and do the movie mavens again.
Sounds
good.
Shober,
Maggie Hunt. Thanks, guys. See, I hate to use the cliche, but I'll see you at the movies.
Retreat Behavioral Health has proudly been serving the community for over 10 years. Here at Retreat, we believe in the power of connection and quality care. We offer comprehensive, holistic, and compassionate treatment from industry-leading experts. Call 855-802-6600 or visit us at www.retreatbehavioralhealth.com to begin your journey today.
That's it for now. And make us a habit, hanging out at the Behavioral Corner. And when we're not hanging, follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter on the Behavioral Corner.